They told me not to look at the church after sunset. I did. The warning. I never believed in small-town superstitions. You hear so many of them growing up that they start to blur together. Ghosts in the woods, haunted wells, roads that never end. But none of them ever felt real. That is, until I moved to Millstone. I came here for quiet, for healing. Millstone was the kind of place where time seemed to stop. A single road wound to the town like a lazy river, lined with crooked fences, withered trees, and pale yellow houses that all looked like they were built before color existed. Everyone smiled when they spoke to you, but it was the kind of smile that didn't touch their eyes. I had rented a small house near the edge of town, an old, creaky cottage covered in ivy, with peeling paint and an attic I hadn't dared to explore yet. From my porch, I had a clear view of the church that sat on a hill in the center of town. It was a towering stone structure with a weathered steeple that pierced the sky like a dagger. Its stained glass windows were blackened, its bell long silent. Yet, despite its haunting presence, no one in town ever mentioned it. The first warning came from my neighbor, Mrs. Holloway. "You see that church?" she said, her voice barely above a whisper, pointing with a trembling finger as we sat sipping tea in my backyard. "Don't look at it after sunset." I chuckled, thinking she was trying to spook the newcomer. "I'm serious," she added, eyes wide with something that looked a lot like fear. "No matter what you hear or think you see, keep your eyes down, close your curtains. And whatever you do, don't look at it." That night, I couldn't stop thinking about her words. It wasn't just what she said, it was how she said it, like she'd seen something, like she was still seeing it. I stayed inside that evening. The wind howled through the cracks in the walls, and the old floorboards creaked like someone pacing just out of view. I told myself it was the house settling. That's what people say, right? At exactly 7:46 p.m., I heard a bell toll, one slow, hollow chime. The sound came from the direction of the church. I froze, staring at the old clock above the fireplace. The church bell was supposed to be broken. That's what the townspeople said when I first asked about it. It hadn't rung in decades. I inched toward the window, curiosity overriding caution. The sky outside was bleeding into purple. The last rays of sunlight clung to the horizon, like fingers desperate not to fall into the night. I raised the curtain just an inch, just enough to peek through. The church was there, still and cold, but something was off. A light flickered in the bell tower, a pale, amber glow, like a candle behind a curtain. And then I saw movement, a shadow, slow and deliberate, pass in front of the topmost stained glass window. It was tall, slender, and it was watching. My breath caught in my throat. Just then, a loud crack echoed to the house, the sound of the front door slamming shut. I jumped back from the window, heart racing. I ran to the door, but it was still locked. The chain hung in place, unmoved. Every window was shut. I hadn't imagined the sound. I couldn't have. That night, I didn't sleep. The next morning, I walked into town bleary-eyed and buzzing with nerves. The townspeople were as cheerful as ever, but something was different. When I mentioned the church, their faces darkened. Conversations ended abruptly. One man even crossed himself and walked away. Only one person spoke up, a boy, maybe 12 or 13, sitting alone near the fountain in the town square. "You saw it, didn't you?" he said, not looking up from a sketch pad. "What do you mean?" I asked. "The thing in the tower. It sees you now. That's why it rang the bell." He looked up, and my stomach turned. His eyes were completely gray. No color, no light, just dull, swirling mist. "My sister looked once," he whispered. "Only once. She's not here anymore." I started to ask more, but the boy stood, dropped his sketch pad, and walked away. When I picked it up, my hand began to shake. He'd drawn the church in exact, unsettling detail. Every crack in the stone, every blackened window. And there in the bell tower was the same tall shadow I had seen, but now it had a face. And it was my face. That afternoon, I returned to my house. I wanted to pack, leave, get away before nightfall. But when I tried to start my car, it wouldn't budge. The battery was dead, even though it had been fine just that morning. I called a mechanic, No answer. I tried walking to town, but every turn seemed to lead me in circles. The streets no longer made sense. The paths shifted like sand beneath my feet. By the time I made it back to my porch, the sun was already dipping behind the hills. That night, I didn't draw the curtains. Maybe I should have. At 7:46 p.m., the bell tolled again. Once, then again, then a third time. I stood by the window, clutching the curtain. I told myself I wouldn't look, but I did. The church was lit from within, every window glowing with unnatural orange light. The front doors, those towering, ancient doors, were wide open. Figures stood in the entryway, motionless. Their faces were hidden, but their bodies were all wrong. Elongated arms, bent spines, heads tilted too far to the side. And the shadow in the tower? It was no longer just a shadow. It stepped forward into the light. It was me. Not exactly, but close. My face, twisted in a permanent smile. My body, twitching like a broken marionette. It raised one hand and pointed directly at my house. I stumbled back from the window, fell to the floor, and scrambled to shut the curtain. The lights in my house flickered. I heard whispers in the walls, too low to understand, but loud enough to know they were real. Something brushed against my foot, though nothing was there. I hid in the basement, locking the door behind me. Hours passed. I must have fallen asleep from exhaustion. When I woke, the sun was rising. The whispers were gone. I climbed back upstairs. My house looked the same, still old, still quiet. But on my front door, carved deep into wood, were 5 words. You looked. Now it begins. I packed my things in a frenzy. I didn't care if the car wouldn't start. I'd walk if I had to. But when I stepped outside, the air felt wrong. Heavy, stagnant. Across the street, Mrs. Holloway stood on her porch. Her eyes met mine. She didn't wave, didn't smile. She only said 3 words. It saw you. The wind had a different sound now. It wasn't just a whistle or breeze. It was layered, like voices tangled together, carried across the rooftops and slithering through cracks of my windows. I stayed inside all morning, watching the street, watching the church. The doors were shut again and the windows were dark, but I knew it was awake. Whatever had seen me, whatever had become me, was waiting. I tried calling someone, anyone, but my phone screen stayed black, no matter how long I pressed the power button. I even removed the battery and put it back in. Nothing. My laptop wouldn't turn on either. The TV, silent. It was like the house had been cut off, not from power, but from the outside world. I needed help. I needed someone who wasn't pretending this was normal. So I went to the only person who'd acknowledge the truth, the boy in the square. The fountain wasn't running today. Just murky green water and an oily surface that shimmered like there was something moving beneath. I didn't see the boy, but I saw the sketch pad where I'd left the day before, lying open and untouched on the ground. There were more drawings now. One showed a line of people, all with blank faces, walking into the church. In the next, they were still inside, but not human anymore. The final page was a figure curled up in a dark room, the outline of the church towering above, and around the figure were dozens of shadows with teeth. On the edge of the page, scribbled in red ink, "She watches through the bell." I looked up toward the church and flinched. The bell tower was glowing again, just barely, even in daylight. I ran, back to town, down empty alleys and cracked sidewalks. Every shop was closed. The bakery, the diner, the gas station, all locked. No people, no sound. The quiet felt wrong, like someone was holding their breath, listening. I banged on every door, shouted for someone, anyone, but nothing answered. No footsteps, no blinds shifting, just silence, until I reached the old library. The door creaked open when I touched it, as though it had been waiting. Dust hung in the air like smoke, and the lights inside flickered dimly, powered by something that didn't feel like electricity. The books were old, leather-bound things with yellowing pages and no titles. Behind the desk sat a man, wrinkled skin, cloudy eyes, hands resting motionless on a journal. He didn't look up when I entered. I saw it. I said. The church. The thing inside it. I saw my face. His lips parted slowly, his voice like dry leaves rustling. You shouldn't have looked. Why? What is it? What's happening to me? He finally met my gaze. His pupils were black. Not just dark, empty, like holes. She chooses those who see her, he whispered. The bell is not a sound. It's a summons. It marks the moment your reflection is no longer yours. I swallowed. Reflection? He nodded toward a mirror on the wall behind me. Go ahead. Look, you won't see yourself anymore. I turned, heart hammering, and stepped toward the glass. What looked back wasn't me. Not exactly. It had my eyes, but they were too wide, too still. The smile curled upward like someone holding back laughter at a terrible joke. And its hand moved not with me, but a second later, as if it was remembering how to mimic. I stumbled back. She wants to take your place, the man said. You've been marked now. The longer you stay, the stronger she becomes, the weaker you become. Who is she? The bell tower bride. She was the last person to look, before the town stopped warning others. The last one who chose to ignore it. Now she watches for new eyes to take. She's not alive, not dead, just waiting. I grabbed the journal from his desk. The pages were filled with maps of the town, timelines, sketches of the church's stained glass windows, and names, dozens of them, all with dates next to them, some going back over a century, all labeled taken. Can I leave? I asked, desperation creeping in. If I leave town, Run, will she stop? He shook his head slowly. You can run, but your eyes already belong to her. I dropped the journal and ran again. The streets had changed. Somehow, the road to my house was now lined with gravestones. My neighbor's porch was gone, replaced by a twisted tree with hanging rope, and above it all, the church loomed taller than ever. It didn't even look like it was part of the same town anymore. The sky above was darker, swirling like ink in water. At my front door, I found a box, wrapped in black ribbon. No address. Inside was a photograph. It was me, standing at my bedroom window, eyes wide, mouth open in a scream. But I didn't remember the moment. I'd never seen that expression on my own face before. On the back, scrawled in ink, "You look lovely tonight." That night, I covered every mirror in the house. I unplugged them all, every reflective surface, even the kitchen appliances. I sat in the center of the living room, surrounded by candles, the floorboards chalked with symbols I didn't understand but copied from the journal. The bell rang again. 1, 2, 3, but this time the third toll didn't end. It stretched on like a scream trapped inside the metal, and with it came footsteps, not from outside, but above, in the attic. Something was moving up there, slowly, deliberately, with creaking, dust falling from the ceiling. I grabbed a knife from the kitchen. Each step toward the attic door felt heavier than the last. The hallway narrowed, twisted. The walls seemed to breathe. And when I reached the door, I found it already open. Cold air spilled down from the darkness above. "Hello," I called out, voice shaking. A whisper answered, but not in words. It sounded like my voice, mimicking, twisting syllables I hadn't spoken yet. I climbed the steps. At the top, the attic was filled with mirrors, not just household ones, old ones, antique frames, silver glass, hundreds of them, leaning against walls, hanging from beams, some shattered, and in each one me, but they weren't reflections. They were versions of me, each slightly off, some crying, some screaming, one smiling wider than any human should, and all of them were watching. In the center of the attic was a full-length mirror, cleaner than the rest. It shimmered like water, and behind the surface stood her. My reflection, my twin, only now. She was no longer matching me. She was reaching, and when her hand touched the inside of the mirror, frost bloomed across the glass. I ran. I didn't look back. Down the stairs, through the door, into the night. But the town was gone. Everything was forest now. Twisted trees, broken paths, fog rolling like fingers. I was no longer in Millstone. Or maybe Millstone had never been real. Behind me, the bell rang one final time and stopped. The sound left a silence so deep it hurt. My ears rang with the absence of it. And somewhere in the trees, something was following. I turned just in time to see a flash of white, a wedding veil, slip behind a tree. And the last thing I heard was a whisper, soft as breath on glass. "You're already mine." The forest didn't feel real. I walked what felt like hours, but nothing changed. Same twisted trees, same pale fog that clung to my skin like wet fabric. There was no sound, no birds, no insects, not even the crunch of leaves underfoot. My footsteps echoed too loud, like the ground was hollow beneath me. I didn't know where I was anymore. The town was gone, but the church, its silhouette, still loomed behind the trees whenever I turned. I tried walking away from it, but it followed me, not the building itself, but its image. No matter which way I went, it stayed in the distance, peeking through the branches like it was stalking me. Then the trees opened into a clearing. In the center stood a circle of stone crosses, each buried in moss, names long eroded by time. In the middle of the circle, a single chair faced a mirror hanging from a tree branch. The glass swayed gently even though there was no wind. On the chair sat the boy from the town square. But he was different now. His eyes were gone, just two dark hollows, and his mouth hung open, whispering something silently, endlessly. His sketch pad lay in the grass, pages fluttering like they were alive. I stepped closer. He didn't look at me, didn't blink, just kept mouthing the same words over and over. I knelt and listened. She saw me. I saw her. She saw me. I saw her. I reached for his hand, but it was cold, ice cold, not dead, not alive, just drained. Then the mirror stopped swaying. I looked into it and froze. Behind my reflection stood the bride, veil soaked in shadow, face hidden, arms limp at her sides. And as I stared, her head tilted slowly, bones cracking, until she was leaning so far it looked like her neck had broken. Then she lifted one arm and pressed her hand against the glass. My reflection did not move. It stayed perfectly still while I stumbled back, heart hammering, breath caught in my throat. The boy's whisper grew louder, more frantic. He started rocking, clutching his knees. I grabbed the sketch pad, flipping through the pages again. This time, I found drawings of the forest, the clearing, me, and one final page, a mirror shattering, the pieces forming an eye. When I looked up, the bride was gone. The mirror cracked. A shriek tore through forest. High, sharp, unnatural. It didn't come from an animal or a person. It was the sound of glass screaming. I ran. Branches whipped my face. Roots reached for my feet. The fog grew thicker, choking, swirling. I didn't know where I was going, only that I needed to get away from the sound. But as I ran, I noticed something. Each tree I passed had a face carved into it. Rough, human-like shapes, screaming silently from bark. Some looked like the townspeople. Some looked like me. One tree even had Mrs. Holloway's crooked smile, her hand outstretched, pointing toward something. I followed, not because I trusted it, but because there was nothing else. Every other direction felt wrong, heavy, tight, like the air was turning solid. The pointing led me to a crumbling wooden house. It wasn't mine, but it looked almost identical. Ivy-covered, rotting porch, windows dark. As I stepped inside, the temperature dropped. I could see my breath. The walls were covered in pictures, black and white photographs of people staring directly into the camera, none of them smiling. At the end of the hall was a mirror. It was full-length, ornate, and framed with what looked like bone. Carved into the glass was a message, etched from the inside. Let her in. A sound came from upstairs. Footsteps. Heavy, slow, wet. I moved. Not up the stairs or into the basement, yanking the old door open and slipping into the dark. I didn't care where it went. I just knew whatever was upstairs wasn't meant to exist. The basement stairs groaned with every step. The air was dense, thick with mold and rot. At the bottom was a single light bulb swinging overhead, casting long shadows that danced like they were alive. In the center of the room was a coffin, closed, wooden, but stained red at the edges. I should have turned back. Instead, I walked toward it. Something inside shifted. Not loud, just the faintest scrape, like fingernails against the lid. I touched the top, heart pounding, and the moment my fingers grazed the wood. Knock, knock, 2 taps. From inside. I jerked back, nearly falling. The bulb above flickered violently, and then the coffin lid creaked open. It didn't burst or slam or fly off. It just opened like someone waking up, and inside was me, but not alive. Skin pale, lips black, eyes sewn shut with thick red thread, and on my chest, a mirror shard where my heart should be. My other self opened his mouth, even though it didn't breathe, and spoke with a voice that echoed in my skull. You look too long. I screamed and ran back upstairs, but the house had changed. The hallway stretched on forever. Doors multiplied. Paintings on the walls showed the church tower from different angles, each one closer. One door at the end pulsed with light, red and warm, like a heartbeat. I had no choice. I opened it. Inside was the bell tower. Not a replica. The real one. I had stepped into the church. The room was circular. Stone walls weeping moisture, wooden stairs spiraling up and down into impossible darkness. The bell hung above me, rusted and covered in something thick and black. And chained to the walls were mirrors. Hundreds, all showing me. One moved. The reflection inside turned to look at me, smiled. Then another, then another. All of them began to move out of sync, blinking when I didn't, raising hands I hadn't lifted. One pressed its hand to the glass, and the bell rang. Pain erupted in my head. A scream ripped through the tower, not from me, but from all the mirrors at once. Each one cracked, splintering across the surface, and then they shattered. Glass rained down around me, and in the shards, I saw flashes. The town empty and abandoned. The boy digging his own grave. Mrs. Holloway burning in her living room, smiling the whole time. My own body standing in front of my house. But I wasn't inside it anymore. I wasn't anywhere. I was scattered, lost, and through the broken mirrors. The bride stepped forward. She wasn't veiled anymore. Her face was mine. Her eyes empty. Her mouth stitched shut. Her hands reached for me with fingers made of glass. And she said, without sound, "One more bell and you stay." I ran, not because I thought it would save me. Deep down, I knew there was nowhere left to run. But it was instinct, the last twitch of something human still trying to survive. My feet carried me down the spiraling stairs of the bell tower, the echoes of my own footsteps following too closely behind, as if something else was running just a breath behind me. The walls pulsed with sickly red light, like veins under skin. Every so often, I glimpsed movement in the cracks. Not rats, not insects, fingers. When I finally burst through a door at the bottom, I didn't emerge into the church as I'd expected. I was back in my bedroom. At least, it looked like my bedroom. Everything was in its place. The dresser, the blanket I always kicked off in my sleep. Even the small crack in the corner of the ceiling I used to stare at when I couldn't sleep. For a moment, I stood frozen, breathing hard, my mind refusing to believe. Then I saw it, in the mirror across the room. My reflection was still climbing the stairs of the bell tower. Moving, breathing, panicking. Without me, I stepped toward it slowly. My reflection stopped. Not at the top. Not midway. It turned and smiled. I grabbed the nearest object, a book, and hurled it at the mirror. It shattered instantly, shards flying like shrapnel. But behind the glass, nothing had changed. The broken mirror still showed the tower. The girl in it still stared, still smiled, still wore my face. And she whispered something. Only her mouth moved, but the sound came from under my bed. I turned slowly, every hair on my body standing. The space beneath the mattress was dark, too dark, like it didn't have an end. I crouched, held my breath, and lifted the sheet. There was nothing there, but the whisper came again, louder now, from the closet. I stepped toward it, each movement stiff and reluctant. My hand trembled as I touched the knob. Before I could turn it, the door swung open on its own, empty except for the wedding veil, hanging from a coat hanger, and a piece of paper pinned to the wall. You're already in the bell tower. You just haven't realized it yet. Suddenly, the ceiling above me groaned. The sound of a bell, muffled and distant, tolled once, then twice, then a third time. Only this time it didn't stop. I screamed as the room folded. That's the only way I can explain it. The walls bent, twisted, peeled open like pages. The ceiling stretched upward into a dark sky where no stars lived, only eyes, dozens of them, some blinking slowly, others rolling aimlessly. And I fell, not down, not up, just away, through walls, through time, through layers of the same moment, repeating again and again, me staring into the church, me opening the front door, me looking at the mirror, over and over and over, until I landed hard on a wooden floor. My knees hit first, followed by my hands scraping against old wood. I looked up. I was in the church, the real church. Dust floated like ash in the thick, cold air. The pews were empty but scratched, as if someone or something had clawed at them in desperation. Candles lit themselves one by one along the walls, their flames green and flickering unnaturally. And in the center aisle stood me. But she wasn't wearing what I had on. She was in the bride's gown now. The veil lifted slowly, like smoke rising, and her face was a mass of cracks and stitches. My eyes, her mouth sewn shut, her cheeks carved with something sharp. I wanted to scream, but my throat locked. Behind her, the altar split open, not like a secret passage or trapdoor, like flesh tearing. And from within stepped the townspeople, one by one, pale and glass-eyed. Mrs. Holloway, the boy, the librarian, even people I'd never met. Faces I'd only seen in photographs and drawings. All of them looking at me, all of them whispering, "You shouldn't have looked. She saw you. You're hers now. You're hers now." They circled me. The bride raised a hand. A shard of the bell, rusted and jagged, floated above her palm. She offered it to me. I stepped back, but I couldn't move far. The townspeople closed in. Their skin cracked like old porcelain. Their eyes leaked a black, thick substance that hissed where it hit the floor. And still they chanted, "You're hers now. You're hers now." The bell shard hovered toward me, spinning slowly, the edge glinting even in the dim candlelight. I turned and ran down the aisle, but the church stretched. The door moved farther away with every step. My legs burned, lungs screamed, but I kept running until the bell rang again. This time, everything stopped. The townspeople froze mid-step. The bride turned her head, and I was yanked off the ground. Not physically. My soul felt like it was being dragged, like invisible claws had reached into my chest and begun pulling upward. I screamed, thrashed, but nothing I did mattered. I was rising toward the ceiling, toward the bell that now hung above the altar. It opened like a mouth. Inside was not metal. It was her, the bride's real form, eyeless, boneless, made of the mirrors and skin and voices of every person who had ever looked. And I was going inside. Just as I reached the lip of the bell, my hand brushed against something cold, the sketch pad. I don't know how it got there. Maybe it had always been part of this. Maybe the boy had left it for me, knowing it would be the only weapon that mattered. With the last of my strength, I tore out a blank page and held it up. The creature paused. It looked, if something like that could look. I pressed my palm against the page and screamed, "Draw me out." The paper glowed. The bell shuddered, and I fell. The scream that followed wasn't mine. It came from everywhere, from the walls, from the bride, from the mirrors that lined the ceiling. The church pulsed, cracked, crumbled. I hit the ground. Hard. Everything went black. And then silence. I woke up in the middle of the road. The town was quiet. The sky above was a dull gray with no sun, no clouds, just a flat, colorless ceiling pressing down on everything. My body ached. My hands were scraped. My clothes were torn, but I was alive. I sat up slowly, expecting to see the church looming somewhere nearby. It was gone. The street was empty. No townspeople. No fog. No whispering. Just silence so thick it pressed against my ears. For a moment, I wondered if I was dead. Then I saw it. The sketch pad, still clenched in my hand. The last page I'd touched, where I'd pressed my palm, now held a drawing. It was me, not as I was, but as I had been, standing in front of the church, looking up at it, unaware of what was coming. Behind me in the drawing, the bride stood in shadow, and scribbled in the corner was one sentence. She's not gone, just waiting. I got to my feet and turned in a slow circle. Everything looked normal, too normal, the kind of normal that feels staged. Like a set, the buildings had no signs of wear. The air smelled like nothing, not fresh, not stale, just absent. I walked toward the square. The fountain ran again, even though I never heard it start. Water flowed, crystal clear. A child's toy floated in it, a red plastic boat. The kind kids played with before tablets took over. I stepped closer. Inside the reflection on the water, I saw the church, still standing, still watching. But when I looked up, nothing was there. I wasn't free. I was inside something. The world wasn't real. I backed away, but a voice stopped me cold. You didn't finish it. I turned. The boy stood behind me again. No hollow eyes this time, just sad ones, too old for his face. What? I whispered. He pointed to the sketch pad. The drawing. You opened it. Now you have to finish the story. I shook my head. I don't understand. He walked past me to the fountain and pointed at the water. Look. I stared. The reflection showed the town, but not as it was, not as it should be. It was melting. Buildings slumped sideways, their walls stretching like wax. The sky cracked like glass, piece by piece. The townspeople stood still on the sidewalks, their bodies rigid, heads tilted back, mouths wide open. From their throats, mirrors emerged, tiny ones, growing, spreading like a disease. The boy spoke again. She's trying to cross over. Through you, through this. He tapped the sketch pad. You were never supposed to look at the church. It was the last seal. I dropped the pad like it had burned me. He stepped back. Too late. A loud toll rang out from nowhere. The bell. Even here. Even now. The town shimmered. The sky blinked. I could see the folds now. The edges where the world had been stitched together to look normal. And the stitches were ripping. The church began to appear again. Piece by piece. Stone by stone. Like it was rebuilding itself in front of me. Fed by my presence. I turned to run. But the boy didn't follow. He stood still, his face blank again. Draw, he said. What? Draw your way out. I didn't stop to ask questions. I snatched the pad from the ground, found a blank page, and started sketching. I didn't know what to draw. My hand moved on its own. A door. A small one, like an attic entrance, with a handle made of bone. When I looked up, the door was in front of me, exactly like the one I had drawn. I reached out and opened it. Darkness, then a breeze, real air. I stepped through, and suddenly I was back in my actual house, my real bedroom. No flickering lights, no mirrors, no bride. It was over, or at least that's what I thought, until I saw the mirror, still cracked, still bleeding shadow, still showing the bride. She was inside now, smiling, and every night since, I've heard the bell. Once at midnight, then again at 3, and each time the cracks in the mirror spread a little more. I tried to burn the sketch pad. It wouldn't catch fire. I buried it in the woods. It returned to my nightstand. I tore out the pages. They grew back. I haven't looked at the church since. I don't need to. It's already inside me. The days don't feel like days anymore. The sun rises, but it never really shines. Time moves forward, but everything around me is stuck in a loop, like the town is mimicking the idea of time, without actually following it. Since that night, nothing has felt real. Not fully. I tried leaving, packed a bag, got in my car, drove. For a while, it seemed like I was making progress. Trees flew by, landmarks passed, radio static hummed softly in the background. But the farther I went, the more I noticed the same tree over and over, the same dead bird on the roadside, the same hitchhiker, never moving, his thumb frozen midair. Eventually, the GPS blinked out, then the road signs vanished. And when I finally stopped at what I thought was a gas station, I realized I had pulled into the town square. Again, the fountain was dry this time. The red boat was gone. In its place, floating where water used to be, was a single veil. I didn't go near it. I ran. Back home. Back to the one place that at least felt like mine. Even if it wasn't anymore, the sketch pad was waiting for me. This time, it wasn't on the nightstand. It was inside my closet, balanced on the top shelf. And when I opened it, there was a new drawing. Me, sleeping, above my bed. The ceiling had opened like a trapdoor. From it dangled the bride's fingers. Not drawn. Real. I slammed the sketch pad shut and threw it under my bed. But when I blinked, it was on the pillow beside me. No matter what I do, the church finds me. And every night, a new crack appears in my mirror. Every night, I hear the bell. It doesn't just toll now. It calls. Soft at first, like humming, but then louder, like metal screaming against bone. One night, I tried earplugs. They melted inside my ears. The next night, I smeared holy oil around every mirror in the house, every reflective surface, even the TV screen. But the reflections didn't care. They twisted, reshaped themselves. The bride's veil floated on water I couldn't touch. Her fingers scratched from the other side. I was spiraling, losing grip, until the boy came back. He stood at the foot of my bed. "Did you finish the drawing?" he asked. "I burned it." He shook his head. "No, you thought you did." I sat up, trembling. "What do you want from me?" He looked sad. "Not me, her." I felt it then. Behind me, cold, clothes. I turned slowly, expecting the worst. But the room was empty. Only the closet door creaked, open a little more. The boy stepped forward and placed something in my hand. A key. Old. Rusted. Its head shaped like an eye. "What is this?" "The only way to stop her," he whispered. "You have to go back." "No. If you don't go willingly," he said, backing into the shadows, "she'll bring you the rest of the way." He vanished, and the lights went out, not just in the room, in the entire house. Every bulb burst one by one. Every device went black. The silence that followed was not empty. It watched me. The key in my hand pulsed with heat, like it wanted to be used. I didn't have a choice anymore. I walked to the mirror. The largest one was in the hallway, tall, full-length, framed in carved wood. My grandmother's, once. I'd covered it with a cloth weeks ago. Now, the cloth was gone, and the mirror didn't show me. It showed the church. The front doors were open. A single candle flickered in the aisle, and in the doorway, the bride waited, her hand stretched toward me. The key in my palm turned, on its own, in a lock that didn't exist. The mirror opened. It didn't shatter. It didn't fade. It peeled back like flesh, and I stepped through. It was night in the church. Always night. The sky above the stained glass windows pulsed dark blue and gray. I was back in the main hall. The pews were intact now, lined neatly. The air smelled of wax and rot. She waited near the altar. Her veil floated in slow motion, as if underwater. Her eyes were no longer sewn shut. They were wide, hollow, bottomless. Behind her stood dozens of townspeople. Each one held a mirror. Each one reflected something wrong. A version of me, dead, screaming, bleeding, burning. One version had no face. Another had the bride's. I looked down at my hands. They were fading. Pieces of me flickered like static, as if I were becoming just another image. I stepped forward. The bride didn't move, only raised a hand. And from the ceiling, the bell descended again, lower this time. Close. Waiting. The boy appeared beside me again. "This is the end," he said. "Of what?" I whispered. He looked up at me, eyes suddenly full of light. "Of you." The bell rang. The sound of the bell tore through the air like it was peeling layers off the world itself. Not just loud, it was alive, vibrating through bone, through memory, through parts of me I didn't know existed. It rang once and the air thickened, rang again and the world tilted sideways. On the third toll, my knees buckled and I collapsed to the floor. But I wasn't alone anymore. The townspeople, or what used to be them, began to chant, low, droning, words that didn't belong in any human tongue. Their mouths barely moved, but their eyes, they wept black, viscous tears. The bride stood at the altar, arms slowly rising, like she was commanding a silent orchestra. And the mirrors, so many mirrors, hovered above her, each one reflecting some twisted piece of my past. A hospital room, a burning playground, my grandmother's funeral. But in every reflection, I was wrong, either too young or too old, dressed in clothes I'd never worn, saying things I'd never said. One version of me laughed as she carved something into her own arm. Another stared blankly, mouth filled with glass. I crawled forward, unable to look away. My body felt distant, like it didn't belong to me anymore. The sketchpad was gone, and the key had turned to ash in my pocket. I had nothing but my voice. So I screamed, "What do you want from me?" Everything stopped. Even the bell fell silent. The bride tilted her head, veil rippling without wind. She floated toward me. She didn't walk, just glided, like gravity was suggestion she had long since denied. When she reached me, she knelt, bringing her face close. Under the veil, her features shifted. One moment, it was my face, then my mother's, then the boy's, then something inhuman, stitched together from regrets and fears. She didn't speak with her mouth. Her voice entered my mind like smoke. "You looked." "I didn't know." I whispered. "You looked." I didn't believe. "You opened the door." The bell tolled again once, and the walls of the church buckled inward, not like they were collapsing, but like they were breathing. She reached out and touched my forehead with one icy finger. And I remembered everything, not just the night I saw the church, all the nights before, every time I had passed by it and felt it watching me, every dream I'd forgotten, every shadow I dismissed, every night the mirror cracked just a little more while I told myself it was age, temperature, bad glass. I remembered walking past the church as a child and hearing my own voice whispering from inside. I remember drawing the bell tower on my bedroom walls over and over, not knowing why. I remembered making a promise in a dream. "I'll come back." "You marked yourself before you were born," she said, still inside my head. "The town is not cursed. It is chosen. You are not trapped. You are part of it." "No!" I gasped, tears running hot down my face. "I want to go home." "You are home." She placed a mirror in my hands. At first, I refused to look. But then I did, and saw the truth. The real world, the one I thought I came from, was crumbling. A facade, a layer of paint overwrought. The streets I remembered, gone. My friends, gone. My house, empty, dusty, forgotten. There was never an escape. There was only forgetting. But now, I remembered. The mirror rippled, and I saw myself walking the streets of the town. Only this me was different. She wore the veil. She was a bride. I dropped the mirror. It shattered, and the shards turned into hands. They crawled toward me, grasping, pulling. "Take your place," the bride whispered. "No, take your place." "I'm not ready." "You looked." Suddenly, the boy appeared again, but this time not alone. Behind him were others. Children, dozens, some crying, some silent, each holding a candle. "You're not the first," he said. "She feeds on the ones who don't listen, who don't believe, who look." The bride stood and shrieked. Her form cracked, and light poured from the seams. Her shadow stretched across the floor, swallowing the children one by one. But their candles burned brighter, resisting her. The boy held out his hand. "You can still choose," he said. The church quaked. The mirrors above exploded in slow motion, raining glass like frozen rain. The townspeople began to dissolve, turning into smoke and ash. I reached for him, and the bride screamed. The sound shattered time. I saw everything in one blinding flash. The church's origin, the centuries of silence, the generations who had fallen to her. I saw every person who had ever looked, and I saw myself. A girl caught between belief and denial. A girl who looked. I took the boy's hand. The church collapsed. I woke up on the forest floor. Dawn was breaking. Birds chirped. A breeze moved the trees above. And in the distance, no church, no veil, no mirrors, just sky, just light. I stood, body aching, heart racing. And for the first time in what felt like years, I breathed. But then I noticed something. The back of my hand. A small, fresh scar, shaped like a bell. The scar burned for 3 days. Not a sharp pain, just a dull throb, pulsing every few minutes, like a clock ticking beneath my skin. I tried ignoring it, pretending it was just a scratch, maybe even a weird bug bite from the woods. But the pain had rhythm, a pattern. It chimed. Every 13th beat felt like the echo of a bell inside my bones. I didn't tell anyone. Who would I even tell? I'd been missing for nearly 2 weeks. My phone, when I finally found in the pocket of my torn hoodie, was dead. Not just low battery, dead. It wouldn't turn on no matter how long I charged it. And when I got back to my apartment, it was like I'd never left. My bed was made. The dishes were clean. Even the light bulbs, which had all burst at night, were whole again. But the mirrors, they were different. Every single one showed a slight delay, a half-second lag. I'd blink and watch my reflection blink after me. Worse, sometimes the reflection would linger, watching me longer than I looked at it. Once, brushing my teeth, I leaned down to rinse and saw movement in the mirror behind me. Me, still brushing, eyes locked in the back of my head. I screamed. The mirror shattered. I covered it with a sheet and shoved the shards into a garbage bag. But the next morning, it was whole again, hung neatly on the wall like nothing had happened. I knew what it meant. I had stepped out of the church. Yes, but it hadn't let go of me. I was still marked. And the bride? She was still waiting. The nights changed. It didn't happen all at once. At first, it was small, an extra shadow in the hallway, the floorboards creaking when I was still. Then came the dreams. Dreams of the church bells swinging back and forth. But instead of clanging, it whispered, "Your place, your place, your place." Sometimes I'd wake to find my hands clutching the pillow like I was holding the sketch pad again. Once, I woke up in the hallway, standing in front of the mirror, smiling. Only, I hadn't been smiling in the dream. I started writing everything down. Not on paper, online. I posted to forums, subreddits, even horror communities. Most laughed. A few believed. One message stood out. Did the bell leave a mark? I stared at it, unsure how to respond. Then another message came. If it did, you're not out. You're just in the waiting room. Attached was a link, a video, grainy footage, black and white. A man pacing back and forth in a small room. In the corner, a mirror. The man didn't look at it at first. But as the footage sped up, the mirror changed. It grew darker, wider. At the end of the video, the man was gone. Only the mirror remained. And on the floor, a single sketch pad, the same kind I had. I went looking for answers. Not online, physically. I drove back to the town, or where the town should have been. The roads were the same at first, but once I passed a dead bird on a roadside, it was gone. Not just empty, erased. No town, no sign, no people, just trees and mist. But I felt it, like a heartbeat beneath the soil, like it was there, watching me from underground, waiting for me to look again. I turned back, drove for hours. But when I pulled into a gas station and asked the cashier where the nearest church was, he paused. "You mean the church?" "What do you mean?" He swallowed. "You've seen it." I didn't respond. He scribbled something on a napkin. Coordinates. A time. Go here. But not alone. Never alone. I followed the directions. Middle of nowhere. Fog thick as paint. My flashlight barely cut through it. I walked with a bat in one hand and a lighter in the other. I don't know what I thought fire could do, but it made me feel less helpless. At the coordinates, I found it. Not a building. A hole. A round opening in the ground, rimmed with black stone and lined with bones. Above it, hanging in the fog, was the church bell, suspended by chains that disappeared into the sky. It didn't move, but it hummed, and when I stepped closer, I saw what was inside. Mirrors. Dozens. Maybe hundreds. Stacked and layered, forming a spiral down into the earth. Each one reflected a different version of me. Some smiling, some crying. One, the last one at the very bottom, reached out, touched the inside of the glass, and I felt it, on my cheek, cold, real. I turned and ran. Didn't stop until daylight. Didn't sleep for 3 nights. When I finally collapsed on my couch, the sketch pad was waiting, not on the table, not under the bed, in my lap, open to a blank page. The pencil rolled slowly onto the floor. I didn't touch it, but as I watched, words began to appear. Almost time. Then, bring a mirror. The next few days passed in a haze of flickering lights, cold air pockets, and whispers behind closed doors. The mirror on my bathroom wall stopped showing me at all. Instead, it displayed a fog-drenched forest path. Always the same path. No movement. Just fog. Still, I'd find myself standing there for hours, staring, hoping something would change. Then one morning, it did. The path shifted. A figure appeared, small at first, far away. The bride. Still, waiting. The mirror cracked in a perfect circle, as though something was pressing from the other side. I taped over it, threw a towel over the frame, and locked the bathroom door. It didn't matter. The image followed me. Every reflective surface, my phone screen, a puddle on the sidewalk, the toaster's metal side, began to show her silhouette. No face, no eyes, only the veil, waving as though in a breeze that wasn't real. I tried smashing them, all of them, but every time I turned around, they were back, untouched. The message on the sketch pad changed daily now. The bell is getting louder. Soon. You looked again. Then finally, only a mirror can end it. I didn't know what that meant, but I was starting to understand one thing. I had crossed a threshold. The normal world, my job, my phone, the people around me, they had started to fade. People rarely made eye contact anymore. Conversations around me felt muffled. I was slipping through, becoming part of whatever this was. One morning, my reflection didn't copy me. It watched me. I raised my hand. It didn't move. It smiled. I gathered everything I could find. Silverback mirrors, black salt, candles, even an old family heirloom, my grandmother's mirror, which she had always insisted must never face the front door. I had thought it was just superstition. Now I wasn't so sure. I built a circle in my living room. Mirrors surrounding me, facing inward, candles between them, the sketch pad in the center. The bell sound was louder now, not just in my mind, in the air. Birds no longer came near my building. The sky outside my window was permanently gray. Time didn't move the same. My neighbor's clock chimed 13 times at midnight. The scar on my hand had changed, too. It now resembled the church's front door. I traced in the mirror once, and my reflection opened its version. Behind it, blackness. Not darkness, blackness. A complete erasure of light. I knew what I had to do. The note on the sketch pad that day simply read, "Come home." I packed the mirrors. I carried them back to the coordinates the gas station man had given me. This time, I didn't go alone. I brought the boy. Or rather, he brought me. He appeared that night in my hallway mirror, said only one thing, "It's time," and then stepped backward into glass. I followed. I landed hard on cold stone. Darkness pressed down like a physical weight. Around me, The same bell tower loomed, but now it was silent. Not even a hum. Just stillness. The boy stood beside me. "You're ready," he said. "For what?" "To ring it." "I don't want to." "If you don't, she will." He pointed to the base of the bell tower. The bride stood there, head tilted back, arms out, veil dancing. Dozens of others surrounded her. Townspeople with missing eyes, open mouths, black threads stitched into their skin. Every one of them held a mirror. "You looked." The boy said, not with judgment, just finality. "Now it's your turn to be seen." I stepped toward the bell. It towered over me, rusted and wet, as if weeping metal. A rope hung from its core, coiled and ready. I pulled. Once. The toll echoed across the void. The mirrors around the bride cracked. Twice. The townspeople screamed, but didn't run. They dissolved. 3 times. The bride turned toward me. Her veil lifted, and I saw her face. It was mine. Not just similar, identical. Same scar. Same eyes. Same fear. I was looking at the version of myself that stayed behind. The one who never left the church. The one who took the bride's place. She stepped forward, and I stepped back, but the boy grabbed my arm. "You can't run. Not anymore." "What happens if she touches me?" He didn't answer, because she already had. Her hand brushed my face, and I felt everything collapse. A room of mirrors. No exits. Just thousands of versions of me, all screaming, all trapped, all watching. In one mirror, I aged rapidly. In another, I was still a child. In one, I wore the veil. In another, I held the bell rope. Only one reflection stood still. A version of me holding the sketch pad. That one stepped forward and whispered, "You were never supposed to leave." Then, "But maybe you can still choose." The mirror cracked. I reached forward, and everything shattered. I awoke on my floor. Living room. Sunlight outside. Normal sounds. My heart raced. Was it over? Had I escaped? I sat up slowly. Everything looked the same. Felt the same. I checked my hand. The scar was gone. I laughed. A full, tearful laugh. Then I saw it. On the coffee table. The sketch pad. Open to a new page. A drawing of me. Sleeping. And above my head, the bell. Swinging. I didn't sleep again for 2 days. Every time I closed my eyes, the bell would ring. Not just in my mind. I'd feel it, like it was hanging just above me, its pull warping time and breath. The sound and echo it bled into the walls, into my spine, into thoughts I hadn't even had yet. I threw the sketch pad into the garbage chute. An hour later, it was back on my kitchen counter. This time, the page wasn't blank. It had a message. "You only delayed the wedding." And below that, in a jagged sketch, me, walking down the church aisle, surrounded by people with no faces. At the altar, the bride, but in this version, she was wearing my face. I dropped the pad, heart hammering, breath shallow. I was losing it. I had to be. So I did something I hadn't done since the first night this started. I called someone. Emily, my ex. She picked up on the second ring, surprised, cautious. "Are you okay?" she asked. "No." I whispered, and for the first time since it all began, I told someone everything. Not just the church, not just the bell. I told her about the boy in the mirror, the scar, the town that didn't exist, the bride who wore my skin, every broken mirror, every delayed reflection. She didn't laugh. She didn't hang up. She was quiet. Then she said, "I believe you." And then, "You need to see something." When I got to her apartment, she had a stack of books and clippings waiting. Most were old folklore books. Faded leather covers. Pages that smelled like ash and damp paper. She opened one in particular, The Saint's Veil, and flipped to a chapter titled The Bride Beyond the Bell. "She's not just a ghost," Emily said. "She's a gatekeeper." A gatekeeper what? To the between. The place where things that were never born and things that refused to die wait. I stared at the page. A sketch, almost identical to the one I had drawn weeks ago, of the veiled bride. The same long arms, the the same stitch mouth. Beneath it, a quote, "She waits not to marry, but to trade. She wears the face of those who gaze too long. Those who see her must choose, take her place, or bring her another." I froze. Bring her another? "She's trying to cross over," Emily said, eyes wide. "And if she wears your face, she needs your place." I stepped away. "No," I whispered. "I'm not bringing her anyone." But even as I said it, something twisted in the back of my mind. A dark idea. A seed planted. Not someone else. Just a reflection of someone else. That night, I tested something. I set up every mirror I had in a circle again, lit the candles, opened the sketch pad to a blank page. And this time, I didn't draw the bride. I drew the church, but I left the door open. I waited. Hours passed, and then the air shifted. Cold flooded the room. Every flame blew out at once, and in the mirror directly in front of me, she stood, closer than ever. No veil. My face, my body, but not me. Eyes too wide, smile too thin, fingers curled like claws. She raised one hand. So, did I? I didn't blink. She did. The reflection failed. And just like that, I had control. I stepped forward, touched the mirror, and passed through. I stood inside the church again. Only now it wasn't abandoned. It was full. Every pew held copies of me, weeping, screaming, laughing, all wearing different veils. The bell was above us all, massive now, swinging with a slow, groaning rhythm. And at the altar, her, the real bride, the one who had warmed my skin. But I wasn't afraid. Not this time. I walked straight toward her. She reached out, and I grabbed her hand. Her smile widened, but it faltered when I didn't resist. "You want out?" I said. "You want in?" She nodded once. "And you need a door." She nodded again. I pulled the final mirror from my bag, the one I had brought from my grandmother's attic, the forbidden one. I held it between us. "This is your door." Her smile curled into something monstrous, eager. She reached forward, and I smashed the mirror between us. Glass rained in every direction. The fragments didn't fall. They flew upward, inward, like a vacuum opening in the sky. The church trembled. The copies of me in the pews began to scream. The bride shrieked, a sound that tore open the ceiling. Light poured down. The bell disintegrated into dust. And suddenly I was alone, in silence. The church empty. Dust settling. No mirrors. No sketch pad. No veil. Just me. Free. I woke up in my apartment. Sun shining through the curtains. The air smelled like dust and old paper. I ran to the mirror. My reflection smiled back. With me? In time. Perfectly aligned. I turned to the table. No sketch pad. I opened every drawer. Nothing. I checked my phone. Messages. Emails. Life was moving again. The world was real. I laughed. I laughed until I cried. That night, I had one last dream. I stood in front of the church. It was gone, burned to the ground. The forest behind it was silent. A boy stood where the altar used to be. He smiled at me, then pointed to the sky. The stars spelled a single word. Closed. I woke up in peace for the first time in months. But just now, just as I finished writing this, I saw something in the hallway mirror. Not her, not me, a new face, smiling, wide, eager, familiar, and under it, scribbled in condensation, 6 words. "They'll look after sunset, too." The end.